Coming up next.
If an addict would say, I have a major problem, I can't fix it, I need God to fix it, and then rely on God, do whatever he says to do, they will become clean. Now, there's 12 steps for a reason, but that's at the net. The people that always heal are the ones that are the most humble. Hands down. I can't do this.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You're here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction, your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Gioia, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast. I'm Tanya Gioia, your host. I am here with a delightful couple, Audrey and Blaine Rindlisbacher. And Audrey is the author of The Mission Driven Life. And then she's the founder of The Mission Driven Mom. And Blaine is working on some other projects with addiction. And we're going to hear a little bit about their story on how it started and then how we fold this into life with God and life with our own identity. So take it away, guys. Tell us how you got all this moving.
Um, well, it started when I was about 5. That's when I first, uh, that's the first memory I have of, I guess, acting out of being in an addiction. Under my bed, fantasizing about women that were not clothed. Uh, a mature, fully developed women. I don't know what I had seen or what I had been subject to, but that's where it started. And then when I was in my teens, it kind of like gasoline to a fire. And as the hormones, my body changed, hormones kicked in, then it got worse. And I just always thought would be, I think, okay, when I'm 16, when I'm 18, when I'm 20, when I get married, when I have kids, when I'm 30 for sure, when I'm 40, yeah, absolutely. And as the older I got, that I would conquer it, and I would, the older I got, the more embarrassed I would be, and the more, um, and the less hope I had, and almost despair at times, because like, what is wrong with me? I don't want this, and I've always believed in the Lord, and and turned my life over to him when I was really young, and always gone to church, and prayed, and read his word, and just tried to be close to him. But I had this major flaw, this major problem, and I couldn't beat. I didn't know how to beat it. And at first I thought it was not, not a big deal. I'm fine, and I'll figure it out. And but like I said, as time went by, that started to erode my confidence that actually I could overcome this. And so I'm condensing a lot, but when I was approaching 40, I was reading C.S. Lewis. Well, let me back up a tiny bit. In our late 20s, early 30s, we found this little arts college, and that's where they read all the great works you've heard of. You've heard of Aristotle and Nicomachus and Cicero and on, and Shakespeare, da da. Da. And so we were really attracted to that, so we started studying that, and that helped. That helped my addiction because I was putting other things into my mind.
Spending time with great people.
So when I was, yeah, not only was I getting the great ideas from them and the great and being inspired by them, but I was also just distracting myself. I was putting stuff instead of fantasizing or thinking horrible thoughts. I was thinking about what I was listening to, because I would listen as I was in the car a lot, and I would drive, and I would have these audiobooks going, and it helped calm things down. And it was still there, but I was approached before. I was like, yeah, things are going pretty good, I guess. But I was reading C.S. Lewis, and he said something, it was a problem of pain, and he said something like, if you haven't repented of something, you still have to. Just because time goes by doesn't mean you've repented. And I thought, I don't know why it struck me weird, but I thought, man, that is really weird. And so I came up with this idea that I'm going to write down every time I act out. That was it was compared to my 20s, it was way mild. And so I did. And I tracked it for about 3 months. And at the end of the 3 month, I was devastated. And it wasn't how often it was. I mean, how much I acted out. It was the frequency. It was consistent. And I thought, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I have a major problem. I'm 40 years old. I have no idea how to overcome this, and I have a major problem. And I'm going to go to hell because no unclean thing can enter God's kingdom, right? And I have to repent. I have to be whole. And when I repent, I can't keep doing the same things. You know what I mean? Because it's really not repentance if you repent, Lord, I'm sorry, and the next day I'm looking at pornography, right? It doesn't work that way.
Well, it is. I mean, you mean it. And he
Well,
knows
sure,
that.
I mean it.
And he knows that.
I know, but that's not how you feel. And and so I was really scared. I was really scared, and it drove me to my knees. And so for literally, I'm not exaggerating at all here. For 3.5 months, morning and evening, I would pray at least 10 minutes at a time. And I would pour my heart out to God, and I would start quoting scripture to him, just to remind him what he had told, what he had sent
to remind
man.
him what he told you to tell him.
If thou canst believe, all things
All the
are possible,
promises in Scripture.
and help my unbelief. And ask, and it shall be given you. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I just told them all the good ones, right? And said,
right.
And I was serious. I was sincere. I said, my weakness. You give me weakness, and I need to be strong. I need this. I need to overcome this weakness. I need your grace, and I know it's sufficient, and I need it because I can't do this. And just pled and pled and pled and pled, literally for 3.5 months. And at the end of 3.5 months, do you want to tell this part of the story about your trip to Arizona?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So this is at 3.5 months I got the book, but prior to that, this started happening.
Let me pause you right there. What gave you even the strength to start praying that prayer? To start saying, I mean, you had a recognition that you had a problem where there's a lot of people who would say, it's not that big of a deal. This is just what you do.
Yeah. I ended up getting my MFT degree, and I was working in a rehab center, and they said, well, why are you? Said, well, you don't know what we're doing. I said, yeah, I understand addiction. I'm an addict, a recovered addict. And they're like, what of what? I said, pornography. Like, that's not even an addiction. Actually, it really is.
You want to be in the middle of it and tell me that it's not.
If you can't stop, and you should stop, and it's interfering with your life, that's the very definition of an addiction.
Well, give us a little bit more. I completely agree with that definition. I think medically people would agree with that definition. Give us a little bit more, because people will say boys will be boys. This is not a big deal. He's not crashing cars. He's not stealing. He's not blah, blah, blah.
No,
How
but
is
see,
it affecting your life?
oh my,
Blaine,
it's so,
Blaine has really
it's
good
devastating.
answers to
One of
that
the things
question.
that how it really impacted me negatively was, number one, is I couldn't think clearly. And it might sound trite, or I don't know, I'm trying to articulate the best I can, but I had like a fog, and I just couldn't reason like I should. Now, I know the difference now that I'm clean and I have all these years of sobriety. I was like, well, I can think very clearly now, and I see the difference.
I think another way of thinking about that would be that now through his sobriety, he sees people as people, not as things. He sees circumstances not through the lens of just his own ego or perception. He responds better. So when he says it's foggy, it was like now that he has clarity, he can look back and see that his perception of himself, of the people around him, of his choices, of the circumstances, of how people were feeling around him, or just all of those kinds of things were not correct. And they were doing subtle ongoing damage to him and to the people around him
That's
in ways
subtle.
that he couldn't understand because he was in the middle of it.
So one of the things with pornography addiction, sex addiction, those types of things, is it often stays buried in shame. Whereas we are almost a culture that says if you have drug addiction or alcohol addiction, hey, we have programs, we have therapists, we have things like this for you. But this other one, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to know about it. We want you to hide it. We would prefer that you hide it. Whereas
I think
drug and
that's in
alcohol,
relation.
it gets to a point where you can't, right?
Yeah.
How does that happen with pornography to get to a point where you can't suffer with it anymore?
Well, I think the relationship is with the societal addiction to sex. It's everywhere. It's like, I think C.S. Lewis said it, can't remember, but he's like, it's like you bring out this hamburger. Hey, what if you brought out this hamburger on this plate and you pulled it and everyone's, it's like, that's what we're doing with sex. We put it on stage all the time, and so it's everywhere. So I think that it becomes taboo when it's not under the right, when it's not under restraint, right? When you're into pornography or when people are into sex addiction, they know it's still unhealthy. So in correlation to how much society flaunts it, you have to hide it if it's not correct. I think that's my guess of why that happens like that. I didn't want to tell anybody, and that's why I went to my knees and not to my wife or to anybody else. Because I don't see God. Obviously, I have a relationship with him. Obviously, I can feel his presence and all that things, and and I do have a relationship with God, but it's not like telling. I don't know why, but step 5 in the steps is you have to write everything down, and you have to confess it to yourself, to God, and to another person. And the other person is the hardest person to confess to, or maybe ourselves once we finally submit. But
I have a thought about, I think one of the things that's going on in our culture, and frankly, I mean, it's prolific in the sexual realm, but it's other places as well. It's a permission culture. So the idea is, if I don't call you out, then maybe you won't call me out. And if I give you, my unspoken permission to be sexually promiscuous, to engage in certain behaviors, as long as I guess it's not molesting children, then we'll all just pretend like, and then maybe when it's time for me to be held accountable, people won't hold me accountable. We'll just pretend like we're not sinning. We'll pretend like these things don't matter. I get blind drunk on the weekend, and we'll all pretend like that doesn't matter. Because ultimately we've been asked to take up our cross. We've been asked to exercise self-discipline and self-mastery. And even if we don't want to call these things addictions, they're definitely really unhelpful behaviors. They are definitely they're building walls between us and God. They're doing great damage to our spiritual self, but they also do damage to our physical self, to our mental self, to our emotional self, to our relational self. And we're the biggest losers when we engage in these behaviors. And so turning a blind eye to anyone's behavior that is pleasure seeking and permissible and not within the realm of a space where we're striving for self-discipline. And that is part of what was going on with Blaine. Not a lot of people knew that. I mean, I knew that there was a problem. He didn't come to me at this particular instance, but we knew all these years, and we could tell you lots of stories around that. But ultimately, we looked for answers lots of places, and one of the reasons he didn't go to another recovery group is because he'd already done that. He didn't go to another therapist because he'd already done that. At this point, it was calling out to God in sheer desperation because he just didn't want to be that man anymore. He just didn't want. He wanted to see him. He wanted to conquer himself. He wanted to see himself as someone who could own himself and discipline himself and behave in ways that made him proud of himself. Russell Brand's book is, he says the F word a million times, but he says some really profound things in there. And one of the things he says is, and I won't use the words because I don't know what's okay on your site, but there's certain, sexual behaviors that you're talking about that people engage in and we pretend like they're okay. He's like, nobody's proud of it. Nobody goes out and shouts it to the world and talks about it at their corporate meeting or, toasts over Christmas dinner about this behavior. That's why we know it's wrong. That's why we know it's not praiseworthy. It's not good and praiseworthy and noble. And so it's something that we need to eradicate from our nature, but especially in the case of the true addict, it is something that you've tried to rid yourself of and you cannot. And people are definitely addicted to food. They're making themselves sick. They're cutting off decades of their lives. I mean, these have real consequences for everyone around us that are very, very painful.
Let me jump in there because you'd asked earlier how it affected my life. And there were real consequences. Besides not being able to think clearly, it really hurt the relationship with my daughters. And I want to be crystal clear here. I never ever did anything wrong with my daughters.
Or had any kind of inappropriate thought.
Zero. I wouldn't let myself go there no matter what. But I wasn't affectionate with my daughters because I was uncomfortable. Because I'm looking at pornography, right? I'm looking at this horrific stuff, and then there's a female here. So how do I deal with I don't know how to do it. And my
It was blocking
daughters,
his ability to
my
have
daughters,
appropriate
my two
family
oldest daughters
relationships.
felt the lack of that. Well, now my third daughter, we have a great relationship. We hold hands, and it's weird because I never held hands with my two older daughters their entire lives.
Right.
I hardly put my arms around them.
Right.
I hardly hugged them very, very much because I felt so uncomfortable. And so they felt distance from dad because why would he be affectionate with me? It was because of the addiction. Also, it affected our marriage, obviously. The betrayal when she found out that I had acted out. There was times she thought I was clean, and she'd find out I wasn't. I'd been lying, and that betrayal. And then it affected our love life. There's no way it couldn't because I had all these horrible things in my mind. So those are just some of the things um, that were negatively impacted. And Audrey said,
I think
the
you
word?
were more reckless in your career and more reckless in your finances.
I was. And you talked about, what did you say? That it was not seduce. What's the word you said? It was just
Subtle.
subtle. You don't see it. You know what I mean? You don't black out and you're in the hospital the next day. You might have a headache. If I really acted out, my headache would be raging. I would just have this horrible headache and I'd have to sleep it off or take some medication. But it's very subtle. You wake up and you feel like crap. You feel guilty. And then you might, lots of addicts do this, which I did, start beating myself up and just I'm the problem. I'm such a freaking loser. Why am I?
That lack of confidence
and
doesn't
separate
greatly
myself,
impact the family.
yeah, and separate myself from God, distance myself further from God because I've done things that he doesn't approve of at all. But yeah, the lack of confidence greatly affected my career and lots of things I did in my life. And we need to get into 5 triggers. And I don't know how much time we have, but one of the major triggers is fear. And so addicts are controlled by fear. And you mentioned earlier, Tanya, that in the medical field would say, yeah, that's the very definition of addiction. But addiction is a spiritual problem. It's not a medical problem. It doesn't matter what addiction you have.
There can be a medical component.
There can, but most of the time is strictly a spiritual problem. And because God says, fear not, right? Doubt not, fear not, and be full of faith. And if you're full of fear, that's not godly. That's a weaker, you're coming from fear is a very spiritually weak position to come from. So anyway, that's just kind of a tangent.
Walk us through the 5 triggers, because that's where I was going next. Of what is it? You have a beautiful family, you have a career, on the outside everything seems okay. What is it that's triggering you to, and it could happen with any addiction, play video games, be on your phone all the time, whatever it is. What's triggering you?
Yeah, Blaine worked with a couple, and he was so addicted to video games, he was completely checked out of his family. He would go to work, he would provide, and then he would come home and go to his gaming room and maybe take a break for dinner, maybe talk to the kids for 10 minutes, and then go back to his gaming night after night,
until
after weekend.
From like 6 to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
every night.
Then drag himself out of bed and do it again. Crazy, so crazy.
But the first thing by far is that overcoming addiction is really, really, really simple. And it's the hardest thing in the world.
Yes.
Is you submit to God and say, my way doesn't work, and I'll do exactly what you want me to do. That's it. If you do that, you're healed. Right? But
you have to come to first.
No, you have to
go through step 2 first. You have to, you have to become aware that there's a problem.
No, you're not.
Well, that's my point.
You're not clean.
I'm just saying you go through a repentance process. But what I'm saying is, if an addict would say, I have a major problem, I can't fix it, I need God to fix it, and then rely on God, do whatever he says to do, they will become clean. Now, there's 12 steps for a reason, but that's the people that always heal are the ones that are the most humble. Hands down. I can't do this. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. It's when you hit bottom.
Well, and to be clear about that, it's self-deprecation is not humility. I have someone in my life who is he's lost everything. He's lost 2 wives. He has no relationship with his children. He's been barred from his career path. He's using 2 or 3 different drugs. He's living with a family member and he's been thrown out of several family members' houses, and living day to day, not working, has nothing. So you would think that this person has hit bottom. And when I was talking to the person that they're living with, and I was like, okay, well, they kept saying, well, he could do this and he could do this. And we've had many conversations about, well, he could do this or that. And finally I said, you're trying to solve the wrong problem. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I said, his addiction is not your problem to solve. You cannot solve his addiction. The problem you have to solve is what you're going to do about this addict living in your house. And they were like, well, no, he keeps saying that he's fried his brain, and maybe he's right. Maybe he can't live on his own ever again. Maybe he can't overcome his addiction. Maybe this is just the life that he has to live. And I said, well, he makes choices, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, and one of the choices that he keeps making is to not accept help, right?
Correct.
To not go to rehab, to not engage in any of the solutions that you bring forward. And so even though he's hit bottom, and even though he's very self-deprecating, this might look like a rock bottom, I'm so humble situation, but he's very full of pride. And that's what I tried to explain to this individual was, look, he could choose to accept help. He could say, I'm broken. I can't solve it, because every day he gets up and tells himself he's going to save himself. He's going to fix the problem himself. He's going to conquer this, even though he has 20 years of proof that he can't.
Lost everything.
He's lost everything.
Yeah.
And he's brilliant. He's just such a beautiful person. So gentle, so sweet, so kind, so brilliant.
On the outside.
So capable. But it's the pride that's burning him up. And I think that's what the principle Blaine's really trying to emphasize here is, it's not humility to keep trying to do it on your own. and beating yourself up and telling her, or we know another person who's like been attending two groups for years and years and years, and periodically he comes to Blaine and says, "Oh, this is painful. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be an addict anymore." And they'll have conversations, but he won't submit and just do the steps all the way through and do the work. It's just pride.
Yeah.
Isn't that the basic parable of the salesman comes up to the porch? She's got the old guy rocking in the chair, and the hound dog is laying there crying. And he said, "Well, why is the hound dog crying?" And the guy on the chair says, "He's laying on a nail." And the hound dog's perfectly capable of getting up off of the nail. He could do that if he chose to do it.
Yeah.
No, nothing's holding him there. No
Yeah.
command, no chain, no anything. But
Yeah.
he's laying there. And the old guy says, "Well, when he's ready to, he'll get up,
Yeah.
do what he needs to do." Unfortunately, all of us have had people who passed away because
Yeah.
the pain was so great,
Yeah.
because the shame was so great. So
Yeah.
Blaine, walk us through the 5 triggers. What is it that
Yeah.
brings you?
Well, I got these. You never told the story about how we got the book. Anyway, we got the book. God sent us the book, and there was like
The big blue Alcoholics Anonymous book.
there was like 5
You got the big book.
there was 5 different miracles that happened to let us know that God handed me that book. It was incredible how we received it.
Yeah.
And so we got the book, and they talk about 4 of the triggers. They talk about fear, dishonesty.
Well, to before you do that, it's important to recognize that we've been to lots of different groups. And many of these groups talk about halt
or heart
and they'll talk about triggers. We all have these triggers, and they'll talk about hunger and tired and bored and anxious. And actually, if you go back to that original source of the original Alcoholics Anonymous book, that is not the triggers that they talk about at all.
Right.
I don't know why that's been lost. I don't know why that hasn't
I know
carried
why they
through
have.
to some of these.
So they have heart, and the first one is hungry. Guess what happens when you get hungry? You get irritable, right? Especially men, right? And so but that's not the problem. The problem is right below that. If you start getting self-pity, or you start getting resentful that you're hungry, then you've got a problem, because the real triggers are fear, dishonesty, resentment, and
Selfishness
and selfishness.
and self-pity.
Well, those are the 4 they talk about. They don't
Yeah.
talk about self-pity, but I figured that out because I was trying to figure out, like, well, look, if there's a poison, there's got to be an antidote, right? There's got to be a way to fix it. And so I was like, well, yeah, but I thought of gratitude. I was like, well, what would gratitude be? And I was like, oh, that's right, it's self-pity. So the antidote is gratitude, and the poison is self-pity. And so if you get into one of those 5, it doesn't matter what's going on. It always goes back to one of those 5s. And when I was at the rehab center, I would teach this, and then they would say, "That's not true." And I was like, "Yes, give me any scenario that you've been in, and I'll prove it to you." And so they would say, "Well, this happened, this happened." I was like, "Well, that goes right back to selfishness." He's like, or
give us a scenario. Give us a scenario.
I don't know. There's a million scenarios. Like, well, one time I heard this guy starting to scream, and I was like, "What is going on?" He's just screaming, "No, no, F, blah, blah." I was like, "What is the problem, dude?" He's like, "Look, they told me they're not going to release me today. And if I don't get released, I have got to walk. I don't have any money. I'm going to have to walk all the way from Arizona to Pennsylvania. How am I going to do it? I'm going to lose my job. I'm probably going to die." So this guy had gone into fear so intensely, he was completely irrational. But he believed that was he thought the problem was, I'm not getting, if he would have acted out, it's just because they didn't let me out. But really it goes back to the fear. That was the problem, right? Or a guy says, I can't stand my boss, and my boss is just ruining my life. Well, then you can get into that. And what's the problem? Well, it could be self-pity. If we just dig a little bit deeper, it's like, poor me, poor me, poor me. Well, you're going to act out. That you're going to act out if you keep going down that vein. Or it could be, I resent my boss because I find out, as we talk about it, that they actually got promoted over this person. And so they have total full of resentment. Well, you're going to act out. And that's why I say it's a spiritual disease, because all 5 of those things are spiritual problems.
They're all ways of being that God never is.
That's beautiful. So they're all ways of being that God never is. So
Yeah.
how is God? What is
God,
So he's the opposite of
he's
all of those. He's the inverse.
he's forgiving. He's full of faith. He's selfless and serves all the time, right?
Charity.
And he's
He's
completely
always
honest.
he's the
100% honest.
never
He's
Right.
constant.
Because the big book says it is those that are not able to be honest with themselves that don't make it out.
Yes.
So it's not really about me being honest with you or the rest of the community. That would be good. But I can't do that until I get honest with me.
Yeah.
Although addicts never are. They lie first to themselves and then they lie to others, always.
So yes,
You would kind of, and I told this to Blaine a lot. I was like, you would stop being an addict if you would stop lying.
Well, and they say
The thing that's
they say in
liberating,
AA that you're sick as your secrets.
yeah,
Which
yeah,
is true.
yeah. And the thing that's so liberating about understanding these triggers, they're so simple, they're so beautiful. It unlocks a lot of, it gives a lot of clarity. Number one, they're all choices. If being hungry were going to cause me to act out all the time, then I'm sunk. I'm going to be an addict for the rest of my life because I can't control that sometimes I'm going to be hungry. But if I recognize that it's actually my resentment, my choice to resent instead of forgive, is causing me to have those deep, uncomfortable feelings that then lead to acting out, well, then I can choose to forgive. I can choose to be grateful. I can choose to serve. I can choose to tell the truth. And so if you understand that God is diametrically opposite of the ways of being that cause addiction, and that it is a spiritual sickness because they are poor coping skills for life's pain. We are choosing the opposite way of coping with life that God wants us to choose, that God encourages us to choose, that God commands us to choose. And because of that, we move deeper and deeper and deeper. We dig that hole deeper for ourselves into that addiction. The more we choose behaviors that are opposite to the ways that God has asked us to be. And they're incredibly liberating because when you understand that you're making choices that are causing this insane discomfort that leads to a desire to act out, then you can start to recognize triggers and retrain yourself to act in more faith-filled ways.
Yeah. And it can be immediate, or it can be gradual. So something can happen and it bugs me a little bit or whatever, but I'm not really not thinking about it, right? But then all of a sudden it kind of gets more intense, and pretty soon I'm wanting to
You're choosing thoughts. You're choosing to dwell
I'm
on.
starting to have bad thoughts coming to my mind, and like just I want to go look at this thing, right? I want to go look at pornography. Or sometimes it's
That
immediate.
temptation is on the other side of choosing thoughts that drill
So
you
what
into
happens
this.
is I'm not even cognizant, and that's something I've had to learn, and I think everyone has to kind of train themselves. What am I thinking? What is going through my head? Because I don't know
What am I
often.
dwelling on?
I'm just
What am I
feeling away.
ruminating
I
about?
know I'm feeling away, but I'm not sure what's going on. And so I've gotten a lot better at like, okay, if I have the first thought, I should just go look at this thing, right? I think, what's wrong? To me, that's a red flag. Something's wrong. What is it? So I go through the 5 triggers. And every single time I was like, oh, I'm in self-pity. And all I have to do is start being grateful, sincerely grateful. And I just say, and I'll ask for forgiveness, and I'll thank the Lord for things, or I'll just say it out loud. I'm really grateful for this. I'm
Or
really
journal.
grateful for whatever, or journal,
Go
whatever
journal.
works. And all of a sudden, that temptation to act out is gone. It's disappeared.
What I'm hearing is what I talk about as the great pause. So you have the thought, but before you take the action, you have the pause. And now, I mean, looking at pornography, using a drug, doing video games, those are all habits that we created at some point.
Yeah.
Can we not, as intelligent beings, create a new habit? Create
Yes.
the great
Yes.
pause that says,
Yes.
okay, there's
Yeah.
5 triggers. Let's walk through those. How
Yeah.
hard was it to pause, though?
It depends how intense it is, right? If it's super intense, I mean, I've had something happen to me, and it was like, okay, I'm going to pick up this pen, or I'm going to look at pornography. There's no difference. It was so strong. It was just natural. It would just be the natural thing to do. It was like, oh yeah, let's eat. Let's look at pornography. I mean, And that's really hard because it's so intense, because whatever happened to me was so intense for me
Well, sometimes,
emotionally,
yeah,
that it's really
yeah.
it's a major trigger for me. And so that's harder to pause there, because I'm just like, okay, let's just jump in, right? But
But
if I
normally that,
recognize it as temptation, and here's something that I don't know if I didn't understand. I don't know how many people understand this, but a temptation isn't a sin.
Mm,
Christ was tempted.
absolutely.
But we are embarrassed. I have been totally embarrassed. And Audrey's like, just tell me when you're tempted. And I'm totally embarrassed. Like, I'm tempted because I want to look at naked women. I mean, how embarrassed. It feels so embarrassing to me. But you know what? When I do that, we can talk it through and diffuse it. And I'm fine. I'm good. And I'm not tempted anymore.
Well, and Christ said, the devil tempts him with, okay, turn the stone into bread. And he says, it is written
Mm-hmm.
that we don't live by bread alone.
Yes.
So, like you said, this is nothing new. The human side of Christ was tempted this way too. And
yeah,
we've got to think that the devil knew who he was.
Oh, yeah,
sure.
for sure. That's why he was
Sure.
tempting him.
That's why he was tempting him. But he went back to something you've said about the great pause of he went back to scripture of who the character of God was. And God said,
Yes.
you can't
Yes.
fill yourself with bread. You can't fill yourself by having a kingdom. You can't fill yourself this way. There's only
Good
one.
point. Yeah. And I'll add to, you talking about, you have this big event and it's so hard to not act out. But the more common scenario is you've been ruminating. It
Right.
feels the moment that
It's gradual.
as the thoughts start to come, I want to act out, they're often after hours or maybe even days of sitting on something and letting it come back and thinking about, oh, this person's so much more successful than me. I'm such a loser. Why can't I get my act together? Poor me. I just can't figure it out. I just can't have the success I want, and I'm so broken. And then before you know it, surprise, surprise, you've acted out or you've wanted to.
And that's just the self-pity. But you could say, I did something stupid that was, like, say I did something stupid about our finances. Well, I'm not going to tell Audrey because I'm embarrassed and I don't want to tell her that. And so now I'm being dishonest. So if I don't clean that up quickly,
Mhm.
it's just going to, he's going to spiral me down. And then eventually I'm going to say, I'm going to act out. And that's why it's so important, whatever they are, that you arrest them, you take the pause and you figure out what is causing this. What is driving this temptation this time, and then you solve it, and then it's gone.
If you're really aware and the people around you are aware, then you can
Yeah,
deconstruct
she's
that
helped me many
together.
times, and like, well, maybe you're in this, and I was like, oh, you nailed it, that's
Well,
it.
and sometimes I've just said, look, you're in self-pity and that's not the road you want to go down.
But I've also been learning how they feel. If I feel like a victim or I feel impotent, I have no power to do anything, then I know it's self-pity.
So let's go back to the brain fog. When you are in active use, you've got the brain fog, but were you able to? It sounds like having emotions and unpacking your emotions was difficult too when you're
Sure,
in use.
sure,
Oh yeah, we don't
sure.
like emotions, right? Addicts don't like emotions because you feel things and you don't want to feel things. You're trying to numb things. I mean, Russell Brand, in his book, when he went to recovery, the lady's like, well, good for you. You found a way to cope with life and you're still here because you were able to do that. Which is,
She said, I think she said, like, congratulations, you found something that kept you alive. Now
yeah.
let's get you sober.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And
And
he had
if
so much pain
people
that he was
haven't read
masking
these
with his
books,
addictive behavior. Yeah, he was just masking that pain with his addictions.
there's 3 books that Russell writes. They are brilliant and worth
Yeah.
reading. Now, I'll warn you ahead of time, there is a lot of swearing in these
Yeah,
books.
lost ring.
Part of who he is, and then he has some videos type things. But his insight is amazing.
It
Yep,
is.
it is.
Because he's so self-honest, and he has that gift of what's it called? It's one of the
Articulation,
intelligences that you have
self-aware.
self-awareness, and that I think that's he draws a lot of strength from being able to deconstruct his own experiences and to be just so radically honest about how it felt, about what he was doing, about what we're covering up, about why we make excuses, all of that. It's hard to read, but it's refreshing.
Yeah. But that is the feelings we don't want to feel, because what happens is something goes wrong and we get into one of the 5 triggers, and there's this tension, and so what we do is we go grab a hamburger or a pie, or we go gamble, or we go get on a video game, or we do drugs or pornography, whatever it is, right? Because that soothes those feelings that we don't want to feel, that are so incongruent, that they're really just grinding inside of us. And so I'll mask it with that, whatever it is, and I feel better. Now, after the high, right, now I feel worse about myself. There's all the shame and the guilt that's attached with that as well.
Sugar high.
Because addiction works until it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And you can do, we're a culture of sugar addiction. You can do it with sugar to the point to where you just can't do it anymore. Where does trust in each other, trust in the Lord, trust in yourself, where does trust come into all of this?
Well, it's just fundamental, because to trust God, because you say, thy will be done, not mine, because my will doesn't work. I'm clear. And anybody has any common sense at all, and are the least bit honest, will say, yes, my will's not working. I tried. How long have you been doing it? 5 years, 10 years, 3, and you can't
40.
stop, right? Doing it for a lifetime. But you say, okay, thy will be done. I'm not supposed to resent people. I have to forgive. I have to trust that if I do forgive, that
Everyone will be better off.
will be better off. I'll be better off. Other people will be better off.
What if, because there are people listening who have been, and these are people, not God, who've been hurt by the church, or where was God when this trauma happened to me, when this molestation happened to me? My trusting is so broken that I don't even know where to start. What would you say to that woman who is saying, I don't even know who to trust or how to trust?
I would say that she needs to differentiate between man and God. And just because he has a robe on, or because he has a collar or whatever, doesn't mean he is a godly man. We hope so, but that's not always true, obviously. And so you have to distinguish between who God really is, and get in God's word. Study who he is. He's all loving. He's all compassionate. He's merciful. He's generous. He's abundant. He's caring, deeply caring. I mean, if you read through the Gospels and read how Christ interacted, anyone that went to him, he would heal. He'd heal them all. And so, if you really understand who God is and what his nature is, then anything that's not that is obviously not him. And that's something you can trust. You can trust that, it says he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He's constant as the day is long, always the same. So meaning you can go to him now, you can go to him in 50 years, and he's going to give you the same answer. He's going to help you in the same way that he can help you, however that is. But that's where you can trust, I think, in a God like that, because that's how our God is. And if you've got it skewed because religious leaders have obviously done something horrible, well, that's not God. And why would God allow that? Because this world's created for us to grow. I heard recently that someone said, you couldn't think of a better scenario than this life for growth. Everything is about the individual growing, whether it's death, sickness, hardships, dealing with weather, dealing with relationships, everything. It's for our growth. And so if God were to rob someone of their free agency, their ability to choose and to act the way they want, it would destroy all of it. And so he won't do that. And he allows people to do what they want to do. It's not his will, it's his permissible will, in the sense that he allows it to happen, but he's not asking anyone to do that. And then he's always there to help heal and help restore and help save.
This is such a valuable conversation. For those that want to continue the conversation, we haven't even really touched on a lot of Audrey's work, and Blaine, the work that you're doing. For those that want to continue the conversation, what work are you doing now? Where can they find more about you?
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's partly your question too.
Well,
can people reach out to
They
you
can
to
totally
get
reach out to me, sure, and I can do my best to help them. I'm working on putting a program together right now, but I don't have it together.
He
But
has worked with people in the past.
Yes.
He's working with a few people right now.
but you're welcome to reach out to me, and it's Blaine at themissiondrivenmom.com and BLAINE at themissiondrivenmom.com, and then Audrey.
They could also go to themissionDrivenMom.com and go to the contact
Yeah.
us and just say they want to get a hold of Blaine.
Yeah.
Everything is at themissionDrivenMom.com. They can go grab the first 3 chapters of the Mission Driven Life book for free in audio format. That's available. They can get a sense of what those 7 laws are, how they help us to ground ourselves and find our call and partner with God to bless our family and our communities. So there's that. The Academy is there. We have annual events. I have a podcast. They can start listening in on that podcast.
But we haven't really even talked about, we've talked mostly about my side of addiction, but her side and how she handled it and how her academy strengthens people a ton and helps them think clearer, helps them think deeper, helps them discern better.
Yeah, I mean,
Really
I will,
empowers
yeah, I
women.
will say if you know, for women and mothers who struggle with any, I mean, we have had women overcome their own addictions in the program. But definitely it is not about becoming a better mom. It's about becoming a better you. And we talk about many core concepts. We focus, the first level of the academy is loving God and developing a divine center and loving yourself by striving for self-mastery. We dive in depth into self-care, self-leadership, and self-discovery, and we give the women a lot of tools for gaining more confidence and knowing how to manage themselves better so they can manage their relationships better. And anyway, so there is that's available to them, and it will help them, it will arm them, it will empower them in themselves, because I think the one thing that Blaine kind of wants to get at in terms of our relationship and dealing with his pornography was just that I was just determined. I think the one thing I did well, the one piece of advice I would give to those struggling with someone in their life who has pornography, is to be very, very conscientious about always separating the person from the behavior, and never demonizing, never
She was
shaming.
brilliant. She would tell me, she's like, "You are better than this. This is not you." And I was like, "You're saying that after what I did, after I've been looking at these things?" But she was always able to keep that separated.
Yeah, it's really important that you see that they have bad coping mechanisms. They're hurting themselves more than anyone else, and that they have access to all the tools necessary to become whole when they're ready for that. There's a lot of other aspects of coping with that, and some of that we work on in the academy. But anyway, that's what we're working on, and where they can find us and learn more about how we can be of service.
Fantastic. I always love when both partners come, and we'll just have to do another one to where Audrey tells a little bit more, and then we'll pair them together and say, hey, if you want to hear what Blaine was struggling with, we'll go here. If you want to hear what Audrey was struggling with, we'll go here. But give us the .com one more time so people can
missiondrivenmom.com.
Fantastic. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for the energy and the passion that you bring to this podcast. And where is the podcast under your podcast, Audrey, under the same?
Under the same name. We're branded on all socials as themissiondrivenmom.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and the podcast as The Mission Driven Mom.
Do we hear both of you on the podcast, or
no?
Just her. She said,
all right. So Audrey, I'm challenging you. I think you need some Blaine episodes.
I do. You're right.
Had me on as a guest one time. We talked about addictions.
Yeah, that was good. It's good stuff.
Well, thank you both for giving up part of your Saturday and being here. Yeah. This will be a very powerful episode. Normally when there are both the person who has been dealing with what we call the addiction, which is the pain, and the person who has their own pain, working that out together. These are very popular episodes. So I really appreciate you both taking the time, and thank you for. Of
course. Yep. Happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Tanya.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope, or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.